إلا بالله العلي العظيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد صلوات على محمد وآل محمد Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Since we are commemorating two separate ideas and functions tonight, the kind of order of how we normally would do a program is going to be a bit reversed. So I'll ask for your sabr and patience with that. So what we'll do is we'll start with just maybe 1 to 2, maybe a few minutes dhikr musibah on the occasion to remember the shahadah of Imam Musa al-Kadhim alayhi salam, and then we will move on to a short discussion about the occasion of the bi'tha and the mab'ath, and then we'll try to tie the concept that we want to get across tonight about the mab'ath with a hadith from Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, and hopefully we can leave with some practical advice for all of us as well. So again, we'll start with a little bit of just a short musibah before we move on to the main discussion. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Muhammad. When we recall the difficulties at the time of Imam al-Kadhim alayhi salam, his time as an imam started off and began this new era for the imams where we would call this an era of ghaiba for the Shias. Up until that point, the imams had pretty much been front and center and present and hadir with the Shia. Right? The Muslims, the Shias, they had access to their imams before that. Right? Up until the sixth imam, there was a lot of access. When you now see what happens with the seventh imam and how the munafiqeen, the zalimeen are treating him, putting him under house arrest constantly, taking him in, releasing him, taking him back, imprisoning Shias, anybody who's seen as a threat, killing off the supporters, the family of the imam. This is where things for the Shias and the family of the Ahlul Bayt becomes very, very serious. So this is really why in some of the riwayat we see that some of them compare the time and the difficulty and the bala that took place at the time of the seventh imam. Some of the riwayat say that this time was even more difficult than the tragedy of Karbala. This is how some riwayat explain the difficulties at the time of Imam al-Kadhim. Towards the end of his life, he's imprisoned once again. And when he's imprisoned, the initial method of how they wanted to try to kill the imam was with one of these guards. The prison guard came with a plate of 9 to 10 dates that were filled with poison. So the guard gave this to the imam. And this is after starving the imam constantly, never giving him food. But at this point now, as almost as a sign of grace, of kindness, they say, okay, look, here's some dates for you. But the imam, of course, knows what is happening. He decides to say, no, I don't want these dates. It's okay. The guard says, no, I insist. Imam again refuses until the guard says, no, I'm telling you, you have to start eating these dates. So the imam begins to have them one by one. After a few of the dates, he stops there. He says, okay, that's enough. The guard says, no, you have to finish all of them. But then the imam informs him. He says, I know what you have been sent to do. And I know what was in these dates. The amount that I've eaten, you've already completed your task. The imam was trying to let him know that I know that these were poison dates. And the amount that I've already eaten, the poison is already coursing through me. I don't need to eat anymore. So the guard left him alone. And this is when now the poison starts to course through the body of the imam. And many of us recall that many of the imams fell prey and victim to different types of poisons throughout their lives, right? Towards the end of their lives. For example, the poison that was put on the sword that was struck on the head of Amir al-Mu'mineen. the poison that was given to Imam Hassan, the poison that was given to Imam Rida. Each of these poisons had a slightly different effect. The riwayat say that the poison that was given to Imam al-Kadhim basically took away all of the strength and removed even some of the blood from his body so that he was completely weak, completely fragile. When some of his Shias came to visit the Imam in his final last few days, they knew that the Imam was not allowed food, so they would just sneak in food for him. And one of these Shias had brought him some food, and they had offered the Imam to eat something. He told them that if I eat this, this will cause me pain. I can't even eat this food now. They saw the Imam sitting down and laying down and praying, and they said, never in our lives have we ever seen you pray like this. I said, why are you praying like this now? He said, because of the pain that is coursing through my body. Because of this poison, I don't have the strength to stand. I barely even have the strength to sit and offer my salah anymore. But still, with that spiritual strength that the Imam had, he did last a little bit longer, even with that poison there. But this wasn't the end, and the Zalimeen wanted to torment him even more. So the guards then came to him while he was still alive. They rolled out a carpet. They put the Imam in this carpet. They rolled him in this carpet while he was still breathing. They sat on top of the Imam and suffocated him while he was like this, as the life began to leave his body. Then, to make matters even worse, they took the Imam in this rolled up carpet. They dragged him, put him on a street, on a bridge in the middle of Baghdad. They called the Shi'as. They wanted people to witness this. And they pointed to this and they said, is this your Imam? Is this your divine leader? Look what we have done to him. Making fun and insulting the Muslims and the Shias of that time. And as difficult as this news was, and as this sight was for the Shia, there was one person whose heart was broken the most. A little girl who was waiting back in Medina, Fatima al-Ma'suma, who was waiting for her father, whose father had been taken away from her for many, many years. Every day her dua, her prayer was that her father would return to her. She was waiting for news that maybe my father will return. Waiting until there is a knock at their door. And her brother goes, Imam Rida goes and answers the door. And when she thinks that maybe this qasid, this messenger is going to come and give news that your father has been released, he's returning back to you. When the news now is given to Imam Rida, he turns around to Bibi Masuma and tells her, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, and doesn't have the patience, according to some riwayat, doesn't have the heart to tell her that our father has passed away. So all he can say is that the imamat now has transferred to me. Send a Fatiha for your father. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد. So now we will shift our focus to the event tonight, which is what we call the bi'tha or the mab'ath. Bi'tha, mab'ath can be translated in a few different ways, coming from the idea of ba'ath, which means to send, to appoint. So sometimes it's called the appointment, right? Or designation of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a Rasul. Now we know that he was always a prophet. He was always a Rasul, but this we say is the official beginning to the mission, right? Where he is called, he comes to the Jabal al-Nur, the mountain of light. He goes to that cave of Hira, and this is where he receives wahi and revelation. Now, in our riwayat, obviously the story is mentioned different than the Ahlul Sunnah have mentioned it. I'm not going to go through the details, most of us are aware. But what is agreed upon everybody is that the first 5 ayat of the Quran, in a formal sense, are now revealed to the heart of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam from Surah Al-Alaq, beginning with these famous words, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. Now, this word Iqra, that all of us are familiar with, we use this point, many teachers, many speakers use this idea to get across one of the, I'd say, most important ideals in Islam. People translate this idea of Iqra as read, right? Read in the name of your Rabb. So people will take that translation, they'll say Iqra, meaning read. Look at how the first thing that Allah, through Jibreel alayhi salam, the first thing that He's instructing Rasulullah to do is to read. So what do many speakers, many teachers do? They say, see how important it is to learn and to read in Islam. Right? It's a good message. It's very good. And maybe at some level, maybe at a superficial level, maybe that's correct. The problem, as again, I think we maybe have gone through before, is iqra. It's very difficult to translate that word as read. It's very difficult. Yeah, there are some opinions that might say it means read, but more precisely, iqra, coming from qira'ah, is going to be recite, not read. Reading and reciting are two different things, right? Reading, generally speaking, requires some type of physical book or something, right? Qira'ah, recitation, is a bit different. Qira'ah, in the way that we would use it, doesn't necessarily require a physical book or something that you're looking at, right? But even outside of that discussion, there's a whole other layer of meaning of qira'ah, of iqra, that's given by some of our ulama and some of the Arabic linguists. And that's something that I wanted to open up tonight, inshallah, with your permission, if you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, if we were just to use the word read, now, read, even in English, has a very basic, general, kind of vague meaning, right? Let's just say, for example, I gave you a piece of paper, and there was a bunch of random letters on it, right? Like X, R, S, T, just random letters. And I say, read that. Now, you could try your best to put those sounds together, and technically it would be reading, right? Even if it has no meaning, it would still be reading, right? If you just put a bunch of letter A's together and just said, that's still reading what I've written down. So that still qualifies as reading. So in Arabic as well, qira'ah, the difference is that a reading like that doesn't qualify as the truest version of qira'ah. Why? Because what the linguists say is that real qira'ah is not just that you connect letters to make a sound. It's not even that you connect letters to make an actual word, but that you connect these letters to make words, then you take multiple words together and create and give out and express meaning from that. So the focus on qira'ah has less to do with saying something or making sounds or reading words. It has more to do with this idea of ma'na and meaning. That's the key here at the kind of deeper level. So made up words get disqualified from qira'ah. Reading words in an unknown language too will then be disqualified as well, right? Because even if many of us, we can read Arabic, or the Arabic letters that are used in other languages like Urdu and Farsi, many of us could probably read that too, but we wouldn't know what it means unless we knew those languages. So that would still be reading, but it wouldn't be qira'ah. So then what is qira'ah exactly? Qira'ah can be reading to yourself, obviously. It can be reading out loud, many things. But when we're talking about over here, this qira'atul kitab, or this al-Quran, coming from the same root, right? Of this specific gathered type of qira'ah. That's what al-Quran literally means, right? A gathered qira'ah. Now many, when they translate Quran, what do they say? That it's just the qira'ah or the recitations put together, so it's a book that's been put together of all the recitations. Okay, maybe at some level that's correct, but when we apply our deeper meaning to this, going back to the idea of a full recitation of meaning, then it even gives al-Quran a whole different meaning as well. Now let me explain a bit more if you can recite another salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So we have to go to another meaning and another usage of the word qara'a or iqra or any of the other derivatives. When you talk about a qur in Arabic, qur can actually mean a specific period of time, right? It can mean like a specific set of something, usually it has to do with time. And the reason it has a connection to this idea of qira'ah is what? When you put something in a set altogether, the idea is there's some quality that is extracted from that full set, right? There's supposed to be some meaning that you're getting from there while you're putting something as a full set of time. So what do some of our ulama say then is meant here when iqra is being told by Allah through Jibreel alayhi salam to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? What is it? This goes back to, again, that original meaning or that deeper meaning of qira'ah being not just bringing, or saying something out loud or making sounds or reading words. It's got two functions to it. One is this idea of collecting or gathering, very similar to jam', but in addition to that, there's this idea that we mentioned before about meaning, of ma'na. So, another way of putting this all together is collect things in a way that it gives meaning. This is a deeper understanding of what iqra means. Okay, what do you mean by collect things and give meaning? So there's a few ways that the ulama explain this. Now, we all know that Rasulullah obviously is the final prophet, right? We all know this. Where was there sharia and messages and risala and things given before? Yeah, obviously, absolutely, right? There was sharia before, even though it wasn't complete as the final message. There were laws that were meant before. There was akhlaq that was given before to all, the different prophets. But was it the complete one? No, it wasn't. So part of the meaning over here of iqra, of gathering or collecting and giving meaning is what? Is that Allah through Jibreel alayhi salam is telling Rasulullah, gather and collect all the previous meanings, the sharia, the ideas that have been given before, and now present them all together as one final message for everyone. Because the message is not just for people who haven't heard any messages before, right? It's not just for the random people who might have no belief. There were many people who were Hunafa, right? Who had this pure religion they were Hanif. There were people who were Jews. There were people who were Christians. They were waiting for an additional message to come. So take the previous ideas that they had heard before, but now add on to that, collect everything from before, and give them that finality, give them that final message. So this is one idea that some of the ulama give. Another that they give is a bit more, call it more metaphysical, more irfani, another one. They say that all of the scattered ideas about the haqa'iq and realities, all these deep truths that people have access to, they're scattered everywhere, right? Because the Christians, they weren't completely on batil, right? They had some ideas of truth. The Jews had some ideas of truth, but not completely everything, right? Even polytheists, mushrikeen, not everything they did was wrong, right? There were some ideas that they had right. They knew that there was a khaliq named Allah, that they would call him that. So they had some basic ideas, but because all of these truths, these realities were scattered everywhere, they weren't put together in one formula, then what Allah is telling Rasulullah through Jibreel alayhi salam is iqra. Gather all of these scattered truths, collect them, put them together, and now present them to everybody as one single reality, one single haqiqah, because they haven't seen that before. They've either had just partial deficient truth, they've had a partial glimpse of this picture of reality, or they've had just bits and pieces. But now with Islam, inna deen inda Allah al-Islam, this final pure picture, now you can offer to individuals what real and actual true reality actually looks like. All of these higher metaphysical principles, all of the sharia, all of the akhlaq, now everything as a full package can be given to everybody that was available there. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So, in the same way, as an analogy for us, when we are reading the Quran, we always accuse Islamophobes, right? People who are anti-Muslim, Wahhabi, Salafi types. We always say when they take a certain word, like an ayah of the Quran, they say that whatever meaning you're taking it out of context, right? Or sometimes what do? Is they'll take just one ayah and they take that out of context. Or sometimes they might even take one or two ayat and they even take that out of context. When we say no, you have to have Al-Quran, which is all of this collected together. The full collection of reality is put into this book. This which has been revealed to the heart of Rasulullah as a pure reality, this is the only way you can understand the truth. If you take bits and pieces, you will never get the full meaning. You might get one word, but you're going to miss some aspect of it. You might understand some parts of the ayah, or maybe even one or two ayat, but you still will be missing the full picture of the surah. You might look at one surah and take one message, but you're missing the surah before and after, which also give it a meaning. And you might take two or three surahs together, but you're still missing Al-Quran, which is everything. And this is why many of our mufassirin say, this is the problem in, let's say, right, because we have two different ways that you perform tafsir, or the mufassirin perform tafsir. One is what they call sequential, which is you just start with Surah Fatiha, Baqarah, and move on all the way to the end. That's how many mufassirin do it. Right? The other is going by subject matter. is that, okay, I want to know everything about the Day of Judgment. Okay, well, I'm not going to get a clear picture if I just start with Surah Fatiha and go one by one for every surah, right? I would have to have gone through the whole Quran first, and then I can say, okay, Yawm al-Qiyamah is mentioned in this surah, this surah, this surah, this surah. I will take all of these together, and now this is the full picture that Al-Quran is giving of Yawm al-Qiyamah. So that's why Mufassirin who are giving advice to other Mufassirin, they say finish the Quran all the way first, through sequence, tartib. Then you can go back and do tafsir mawdu'i, a subject matter, tafsir. So it's important for us to do kind of both of these, I'd say, right? So now for us, what do we have to do? When we are trying to develop and understand a better relationship with the Quran, we'll have to do some of these things as well too. Now, we can go sequentially, fine, but if we're trying to get a good picture, an idea of something, then we know that we have to go with a mawdu'i style, right? That would be the better style to do that. Now, there's one other thing that I wanted to connect this with tonight, inshallah, since out of respect for the seventh Imam, I wanted to connect it with a point about the idea of knowledge and how we approach knowledge and how we disseminate knowledge, especially to our own children, as a point of tarbiyah. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So hopefully the takeaway point from this first part is that iqra, qira'ah, is not just about saying stuff or reciting or reading. It's about gathering, collecting, and giving meaning when things are collected properly. When you have the full picture and the full context, that's when you get the full meaning. That's what Al-Quran is, and that's what Al-Islam needs to be. Okay. Now, many of us, we do fall short in that. In one of the riwayat reported from the seventh Imam, he describes the way that ilm, in information and knowledge, should be found in people. And he describes it like this. وَجَدْتُ عِلْمَ النَّاسِ فِي أَرْبَعَةٍ. He reports that, or he's attributed to have said that, I found the knowledge of people in four things. So in other words, I found real knowledge in these four things. أَوَّلُهَا أَن تَعْرِفَ رَبَّكَ. The first is that you have ma'rifah, or you have this deep understanding of your Rabb, your nurturer, the one who takes care of you. وَالثَّانِيَ أَن تَعْرِفَ مَا صَنَعَ بِكَ. The second is gaining ma'rifah, having this deep understanding of that Rabb of yours, what He has done for you, what He has made for you, what He's created for you, all these things He's done for us. وَالثَّالِثَ, the third thing, أَن تَعْرِفَ مَا أَرَادَ مِنْكَ. The third thing is after I've gained ma'rifah of my Rabb, after I have understood and gained ma'rifah of the things He's done for me, then the third thing is, what is His irada from me? What does He actually want from me? وَرَابِعَ أَن تَعْرِفَ مَا يُخْرِجُكَ مِن دِينِكَ. And the fourth thing is to gain ma'rifah and understanding about what? About what Allah expects from me regarding my deen. Like, what do I want? So, it's about the ma'rifah of Allah, for going in order. Ma'rifah of Allah or your Rabb, the nature of creation and blessings, what Allah wants from us, His irada, His intention, His will, and the things maybe He doesn't want, meaning the deen, the rules, religion, regulations, all those things like that, right? So, what does this have to do with us in terms of tarbiyah, parenting, things like this? Now, let's be honest. This order, if we're taking it as an order, the order the Imam is giving, is this the way that we normally teach our kids, or that we teach, or we've been taught Islam? That we learn ma'rifah of Allah, we learn about what He's done for us, then we learn about what He wants, then we teach, let's say, rules and regulations and things like that? I'll tell you, the vast majority of Muslims that I've met, the vast majority of teachers that I've interacted with, the Sunday schools that I've been around, everything ends up going in reverse. What's one of the first things that people try as parents or teachers? What do? The first thing they try to do is to tell their kids or tell their students, oh, these are the rules and regulations. Here's the ahkam. You have to pray like this. This is what you can eat. This is what you can't eat. This is what you can drink, what you can't drink. This is what you can watch. You can't watch. You can't listen to this. Don't do this. All the do's and don'ts, right? They explain all the rules. Then maybe later on, almost as a guilt thing, they say, you have to do this because that's what Allah wants from you. You have to follow these rules because that's what Allah said. And then if the child still doesn't listen, after we said you have to do this or don't do this, and we've told them that that's what Allah wants you to do, then we guilt trip them even more. We say, think about all the blessings Allah's given you. You should be doing this. What's wrong with you? Why aren't you doing this? And then maybe, once in a while, we might get to the last stage, which is, okay, now let me prove to you that Allah even exists in the first place. Let me introduce you to Allah. Right? It's complete in reverse order. It's funny, many of us, the way that we've learned it, if we had the proper ordered teaching of all of this, if I gained ma'rifah of my Rabb, my nurturer, my Lord, my caretaker properly, then everything else would fall in line very easily. It would be very easy to understand what Allah has done for us. It would be very easy for me to say, okay, now I can learn what Allah wants from me. And then as a consequence, very naturally, let's say, okay, I'm going to do whatever He wants in the deen. But if the first thing you're going to tell me is, okay, this Allah that you don't even know yet, I'm going to tell you what He wants from you. I don't even know, you're introducing me to somebody, I don't even know them yet. You want me to pray at this time and wake up like this and fast like this? For most people, it doesn't make sense. And you see that many adults to this day, what they're looking for is pretty much the first, maybe one or two things, because they've never gotten that. They want more ma'rifah of Allah, even though that should have been one of the first things we all learned. They say, yeah, I'm praying, but I don't have that hudur al-qalb. I don't have this connection with Allah. I don't understand my Rabb. I'm not grateful for the things that He's given to me. I know He's done stuff, but I'm not really grateful for it. Or maybe I don't do enough shukr. Or maybe I don't know why He does these things. Or maybe there's things that I think are evil. So that means we don't understand Allah yet. So our lives are pretty much put in reverse order, right? So as a reminder for ourselves, again, for us educating our children, even for ourselves, the way that this kind of riwayah, and what you'll find throughout the riwayat of the Ahlul Bayt, is they always say that the beginning of deen is what? Awwaluhu ma'rifah of Allah, right? Even in Nahju Balagha, the first thing Imam Ali alayhi salam says is the beginning, the first part of deen is ma'rifah of Allah, right? That's the beginning part of deen. And you see this throughout the narrations of the Ahlul Bayt, that learn about Allah first, however much a child can understand, right? I'm not saying give them some proof of like imkan al-wujud and things like that, but you give them some basic ideas so they know that, okay, this is Allah, you created us, okay. And then you start to explain that Allah did all these things for us. He gave you this soul that can grow, right? He gave us these blessings. You say, wow, Allah gave me all this stuff? Yes. And Allah even told us what He wants from us too. And if they understand that, okay, I know that Allah is there, I know that He's given me the blessings, then okay, I obviously want to know what Allah wants from me. And then explaining deen, explaining ahkam, all these things will become so much easier than that. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So hopefully we can put these two ideas together. The same way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sent down to offer and take all these small pieces of reality, all these smaller ayat, calling them signs, putting them together in one complete, perfect package and offering it to all of us, those who were back then, and then those of us now. We still have that mu'jiza with us, Al-Quran. We have this package. The idea is a complete book that gives meaning to everything. In that same way, we take benefit from the words of the seventh Imam, that in order for us to train ourselves, and then by extension train our kids, train our nephews and nieces, our grandkids, our students, whomever, then we want to keep that same idea in mind, is not just to randomly get people to recite and read Quran without any meaning, or just to pray without any meaning, to say, no, we want to do this qira'ah as well, to bring together everything and give you meaning to this. We want them at an early stage. Okay, we're late in the game, fine. Allah gives us the opportunity to learn, we're trying to learn. But for our children, we don't want them to go through the same issues that we have gone through. We want that qira'ah, the iqra, for them right in the beginning. So that for them, obviously, the hope for every parent is that I hope my child turns out better than me. So the same pitfalls, the same mistakes that I've made or made to me and done to me, I don't want to make those same mistakes again. So I will try to follow in the footsteps of Rasulullah, put all these things together with a larger meaning, given the context of this, and then present them the Quran like this. Present them Islam like this. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. If there are any questions, maybe we have time for like one or two, if anybody has any questions. Related to the topic, not... Related to the topic.
Imam Musa he said
As an imam, you mean, or alive? Yeah. I don't know. The trivia, the dates and things, I'm not good with that. If anybody knows, you can say. I don't know how long he was alive. To get. Mhm. I mean, yeah. So obviously, there's a bigger discussion about the nature of the information or the quote unquote specific mission of the seventh Imam and what he was able to accomplish. Some, for example, say that from the time the quote unquote ending period of the sixth Imam's Imama onwards, the main sort of function of those Imams was to set up the idea of wikala, because they had seen, even, I mean, we say the sixth Imam was open. He wasn't exactly open either. That's not completely true. In the beginning part of his imamat, he had a bit more openness because the Umayyads and Abbasids were fighting for power. So it became an opportunity, some tawfiqat. But towards the end, once the Abbasids had taken over, then he pretty much lost the opportunity. And still, there was a lot of taqiyya that still had to happen even in that stage. So what many of our historians mention is that that ending period of the sixth Imam onwards for the final Imams was all about what we've done, whatever we could to try to spread this idea of wilaya. But now the only way for wilaya to continue is through the system of wikala, because we know that our Shias, our Muslims, won't have access to us anymore. They knew this. So they said we have to start mentioning these are our na'ibin. This is a person who's going to be connected to us, so that way the khums and other things could be connected through them and they could disseminate them, things like this, right? So that seems to be, again, there's other details too, but it seems to be one of the major things that the Imam was doing. Whether there was this more da'wah towards general wilaya into the Ahlul Bayt, I haven't read his history that much, so I wouldn't know if that was a point that was brought up there or not. Yeah, that's what the brother meant, right? Yeah, so look, the issue with any of these sort of final details of those Imams, especially the later Imams, is we're generally getting information from multiple different sources, right? And some of them are saying what I believe you say is a Ratsut, that some say that the poison, he came to the poison there, that's where they put him in the carpet and took him on the bridge. There are other reports which say, no, he was still alive and they suffocated him while he was poisoned in that carpet and sat on him there and then brought him out. So there's different reports there, because with many of the history, we have, let's say, our own history, which is not super extensive, and then we have history which comes from the enemies as well too. Some of the enemies who remained enemies, they were kind of proud of, now they were proud of this, so they would say it out loud to people. And some of it would be the enemies initially, but then afterwards they did istighfar and they said we shouldn't have done this, but they would tell people what they end up doing, right? So a job of a good historian, which I'm definitely not, is to take these things and offer what is the best or most likely given all these different pieces. So it becomes very, very difficult to do, especially with the time of, let's say, the seventh Imam onwards, right? So yeah, it's very difficult to say this is definitely what happened. Yeah. So we always say, Wallahu a'lam, we don't know, right? That's not. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ahli baytihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.